Prospect Park is an urban park in Brooklyn, New York City. The park is situated between the neighborhoods of Park Slope, Prospect Heights, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, Flatbush, and Windsor Terrace, and is adjacent to the Brooklyn Museum, Grand Army Plaza, and the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. With an area of 526 acres, Prospect Park is the second largest public park in Brooklyn, behind Marine Park. Designated as a New York City Scenic Landmark, and listed on the National Register of Historic Places, Prospect Park is operated by the Prospect Park Alliance and NYC Parks. First proposed in legislation passed in 1859, Prospect Park was laid out by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, who also helped design Manhattan's Central Park. Following various changes to its design, Prospect Park opened in 1867. Though it was not substantially complete until 1873, the park subsequently underwent numerous modifications and expansions to its facilities. Several additions to the park were completed in the 1890s. In the City Beautiful architectural movement, in the early 20th century, New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, NYC Parks, Commissioner Robert Moses started a program to clean up Prospect Park. A period of decline in the late 20th century spurred the creation of the Prospect Park Alliance, which refurbished many parts of the park from the 1980s through the 2020s. Main attractions of the park include the 90-acre Long Meadow, the Picnic House, Litchfield Villa, Prospect Park Zoo, the Boathouse, Concert Grove, Brooklyn's only lake, covering 60 acres, and the Prospect Park Bandshell, that hosts outdoor concerts in the summertime. The park also has sports facilities, including the Prospect Park Tennis Center, basketball courts, baseball fields, soccer fields, and the New York Petting Club in the parade ground. There is also a private Society of Friends, Quaker, cemetery on Quaker Hill near the ball fields. In addition, Prospect Park is part of the Brooklyn-Queens Greenway, a network of green spaces that stretch across western Long Island. Planning. The original impetus to build Prospect Park stemmed from an April 18, 1859, act of the New York State Legislature, empowering a 12-member commission to recommend sites for parks in the city of Brooklyn. At the time, Brooklyn was the world's first commuter suburb, and it eventually became the third largest city in the country after New York and Philadelphia. During this time, concepts concerning public parks gained popularity. In 1858, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux had created the design for Central Park in Manhattan, which became the first landscaped park in the United States. James S. T. Stranahan, then president of the Brooklyn Board of Park Commissioners, believed that a park in Brooklyn would become a favorite resort for all classes of our community, enabling thousands to enjoy pure air, with healthful exercise, at all seasons of the year. He also thought a public park would attract wealthy residents. Stranahan originally envisioned one large park extending eastward to Jamaica, Queens. However, the city's rapid development made this impossible, and today, the largest remnants of this proposed landscape are Prospect Park and the 538-acre Forest Park in Queens. In February 1860, a group of 15 commissioners submitted suggestions for locations of 4 large parks and 3 small parks in Brooklyn, as well as a series of boulevards to connect said parks. The largest of these proposed parks was a 320-acre, 1.3 square kilometers, plot centered on Mount Prospect, and bounded by Warren Street to the north, Vanderbilt, 9th, and 10th Avenues to the west, 3rd and 9th Streets to the south, and Washington Avenue to the east. Egbert Veal began drawing plans for Mount Prospect Park, as the space was initially called, and published his proposal in 1861. The park was to straddle Flatbush Avenue, and include Prospect Hill, as well as the land now occupied by the Brooklyn Public Library, Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and Brooklyn Museum. By late 1860, land had been purchased for Veal's plan. However, the onset of the Civil War stopped further activity, and the boulevards and smaller parks were pushed back. The delay prompted some reflection. Stranahan invited Calvert Vaux to review Veal's plans early in 1865. Vaux took issue with Flatbush Avenue's division of the park, thought that the park should have a lake, and urged for southward expansion beyond the city limits, and into the then independent town of Flatbush. 8691 Vaux's February 1865 proposal reflected the present layout of the park: 3 distinctive regions, meadow in the north and west, a wooded ravine in the east, and a lake in the south. Without being divided by Flatbush Avenue, Vox included an oval plaza at the northern end of the park, which would later become Grand Army Plaza. The revised plan called for the purchase of additional parcels to the south and west to accommodate Prospect Lake, but it excluded parcels already purchased east of Flatbush Avenue, including Prospect Hill itself. In addition, engineer-in-charge Joseph P. Davis and assistants John Bogart and John Y. Collier were named to work on the project. By then, land speculation was underway. The plot bounded by 9th and 10th Avenues, between 3rd and 15th Streets, was held by real estate developer Edwin Clark Litchfield, who had erected his home, Litchfield Manor, on the east side of 9th Avenue in 1857. The Parks Commission ultimately acquired the Litchfield plot in 1868 for $1.7 million, 42% of the overall expenditure for land, even though the plot constituted just over 5% of the park's acreage. Much of this acreage houses the maintenance yards and is rarely seen by the public. In 1866, the New York State Legislature passed a bill approving the acquisition of additional land on the southwest side of the park. The park was built around the pre-existing Quaker cemetery, which was accommodated by an agreement under which the Society of Friends deeded their unused acreage to the park. In exchange, they retained the remaining 10 acres for their private cemetery in perpetuity, as well as the rights to access. Before the park, approximately 17,000 years ago, the terminal moraine of the receding Wisconsin Glacier that formed Long Island, known as the Harbor Hill Moraine, established a string of hills and kettles in the northern part of the park, and a lower-lying outwash plain in the southern part. Mount Prospect, or Prospect Hill, near the intersection of Flatbush Avenue and Eastern Parkway, is one of the tallest hills in Brooklyn, rising 200 feet, 61 m, above sea level, 218. It is the highest among a string of hills that extends into the park, including Sullivan, Breeze, and Lookout Hills. The area was originally forested, but became open pasture after 2 centuries of European colonization. Significant stands of trees remained only in the peat bogs centered south of 9th and Flatbush Avenues, as well as in a large bog north of 9th Street, and contained chestnut, white poplar, and oak. Some of these stands were preserved in the modern-day Prospect Park Ravine, and nicknamed the Last Forest of Brooklyn. During the American Revolutionary War, 1775–1783, the park was a site of the Battle of Long Island, aka Battle of Brooklyn. American forces attempted to hold Battle Pass, an opening in the terminal moraine, where the old Flatbush Road passed from the villages of Brooklyn to Flatbush. It fell after some of the heaviest fighting in the engagement, and its loss contributed to George Washington's decision to retreat. Even though the Continental Army lost the battle, they were able to hold the British back long enough for Washington's army to escape across the East River to Manhattan. Plaques north of the zoo, as well as the Maryland Monument at Lookout Hill's foot, honor this event. The city of Brooklyn built a reservoir on Prospect Hill in 1856. The need to keep the lots around the reservoir free of development, as well as the preservation of the Battle Pass area, were cited as 2 reasons for establishing a large park near construction. Despite the repercussions of Vox's revisions, Stranahan championed the revised proposal. Vox recruited Olmsted and formally presented the plan in February 1866. The revised plan was accepted by May. Construction started the following month, and initial work focused on draining the land. Then, the roads, bridle paths, and walks within Prospect Park were graded, and individual features were landscaped. 3 scenic roads, the West, Center, and East Drives, were built within the perimeters of the park. Depending on the time of year, between 250 and 2,000 workers were employed. Much of the landscaping focused on removing obstructions such as pits and swamps, and enhancing other natural features such as hills. Trees were only removed if they blocked a roadway or path that was being built. The first section of the park opened to the public on October 19, 1867, while it was still under construction. The segment that was open to the public included part of the East Drive, between the north end of the park, at modern-day Grand Army Plaza, and Coney Island Avenue at the southeast corner. The park initially contained the playground, which had a croquet lawn, a sailboat pond, a maze, and a summer house. By 1868, the open portions of Prospect Park were patronized by 100,000 people per month, and several miles of roads, paths, and walkways had been completed. The land for Prospect Park's parade ground was acquired that year. A series of pedestrian arches to separate pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the park were also built during this time. Over 200 benches were installed to accommodate the new visitors. Rustic wooden shelters with various oblong and polygonal shapes were placed along the shore of Prospect Park's lake, and were designed to be used as scenic overlooks. Several bridges and 800 bird houses were installed to enhance the park's rustic quality. In its 1870 annual report, the Brooklyn Park Commissioners reported that the lake was nearly completed, and that widening of nearby streets was underway. 9/11 by 1871. The monthly visitor count had increased to 250,000. The park's patronage continued to increase, and in an 1873 article, the New York Times described Prospect Park as having become an indispensable Sunday resort for the toiling thousands of Brooklyn. However, the high patronage also had downsides. An 1875 editorial in the Times observed that many people would take shortcuts along the grass rather than travel on designated routes. Prospect Park was substantially complete in 1873, but with the financial panic of that year, Olmsted and Vaux stopped collaborating on the park's construction. Some of the originally envisioned facets of the park, such as an observation tower, a terraced restaurant, and a top-shaped carriage concourse, were not built. Olmsted and Vaux had also planned for a system of parkways to connect to Prospect Park, though only two were built: Ocean Parkway, running to Coney Island in the south, and Eastern Parkway, running to Crown Heights in the east. Overall, the city of Brooklyn spent more than $4 million to acquire the parkland, while the actual cost of construction amounted to more than $5 million. Stranahan was regarded by his 19th-century peers as the true father of Prospect Park, a reputation established through his 22-year reign as Park Commission President, 1860-1882, engagement of Olmsted and Vaux, overseeing complex land acquisitions, securing funding to build the park, and after the park's completion, defending the park against changes that were not compatible with the overall design. A statue of James S. T. Stranahan was proposed in 1890, located inside the Grand Army Plaza entrance. The statue was sculpted by Frederick MacMoise and presented to Stranahan in June 8, early 21st century. By 2000, the Woman Rink was deteriorating, and there was a need to replace it. The Alliance soon formed plans to restore Music Island and the original shoreline, both obliterated by the construction of the original rink in 1960. Several Moses-era playgrounds and the band shell were retained because their venues were popular. Original rustic summer houses were restored or recreated on the shores of Prospect Park Lake, along the Lullwater and in the ravine. As part of the restoration plans, the Woman Rink was to be replaced by two rinks in the new Lefrak Center, a year-round recreational facility. Work on the Lefrak Center began in 2009, and the Woman Rink had been demolished by 2011. The Samuel J. and Ethel Lefrak Center at Lakeside was completed in December 2013 at a cost of $74 million. As part of the Woman Rink's replacement, plans for the restored Music Island were announced in 2009. The Chaim Bayer Music Island and the Shelby White and Leon Levy Esplanade overlooking the island were restored using a $10 million grant, and were officially rededicated in October 2012. The Prospect Park Alliance subsequently completed or proposed more restoration projects for the park. Long Meadow Ball Field 1 was rebuilt between 2013 and 2014. The following year, the Alliance announced some projects on Prospect Park's eastern side, including the $200,000 restoration of Battle Pass. The Alliance also intended to restore the water-damaged Oriental Pavilion for $2 million and replace fencing on Flatbush Avenue for $2.4 million. In 2016, the Alliance also received $3.2 million from NYC Parks Without Borders program to construct two new entrances on Flatbush Avenue, the park's first new entrances in over 70 years, as well as rebuild the Willink entrance. During the city's 2016 fiscal year, which ended June 30, 2016, politicians also contributed funds toward various restoration projects in the park. These included $2.5 million for renovating Lefferts Historic House, $2 million to rebuild pathways, $1.75 million for replacing fencing on Ocean Avenue, $750,000 for renovating the Ballfields on Long Meadow, and $500,000 for the Carousels restoration. In addition, $100,000 was earmarked for the installation of an experimental running surface on Park Drive, and through a participatory budgeting program, residents of the surrounding communities allocated funds for other projects such as new drinking fountains, a dog run, community barbecue sites, and an aquatic weed harvester. Also in 2016, as part of a project to repair damage caused by Hurricane Sandy in 2012, the Prospect Park Alliance used goats to clean up the shrubbery and woodlands around the Vale of Kashmir. Then Ray landscaped the sites at a cost of $727,000. The Well House, located on the lake, reopened in 2017 as a composting restroom, and the dog beach along the watercourse's upper pool was renovated. The same year, the Alliance received funds to renovate the parade ground, the tennis house, and ball fields. The Alliance also announced an upcoming renovation of the Rose Garden. Ball fields 6 and 7 were renovated and reopened in 2017, while ball fields 4 and 5 reopened in late 2020. Construction started on the Flatbush Avenue fence repairs in 2018, and the new entrances were slated to start construction in early 2019. Construction of a dog run in the parade ground also started in August 2019, and the dog run opened in July 2020. The Concert Grove Pavilion reopened in April 2021 after a one-year renovation. That December, a $40 million renovation of the Vale of Kashmir was announced. The last two ball fields on Long Meadow reopened in early 2023 after several years of renovations. During mid-2023, the New York City government considered erecting tents in Prospect Park to temporarily house asylum seekers. The Prospect Park Alliance reopened Falco Falls to the public in October 2023. Prior to Falco Falls reopening, trespassers regularly